You don't want them to get too big. Every time I try to buy them from somebody, they, and you still cook them later, just be straight. They were talking on. Well, we know it's close anyway.
Welcome you to Hamilton Service, Local Church, number 147. 147 will be our first hymn. Brother Allen has the song service, Brother Ralph has the opening prayer, and I have the closing prayer. Okay, party Thursday at 5:30 in the fellowship building. I will remember that.
I have heard of a land on the faraway strand. 'Tis a beautiful home of the soul, built by Jesus on high, where we never shall die. 'Tis a land where we never grow old, never grow old. cross
their help and those on the place in life, Father, and we know that right now, so we lost other one. We pray that you understand every time we live. We pray for the soldiers here at home, and we pray for you can save, bring them home safely. We pray for those out there in the bloody country, we pray for their will be in order, comfort them in their time of need. Pray now that you go with us, and watch over us, and give us what you give us for our sins, and know that we fall short of. Go with us, watch over us, what you got to make for us, and we shall pray in Christ. Amen.
420. Also, we'd like to stand and sing this song. Whatever you do in word or deed, call the name of the Lord. Do not in the name of man or creed, do all in the name of the Lord. Do all in His name, do all in the name of the Lord. In word or deed, as God decreed, do all in the name of the Lord. Till trolls and laborers here are gone, do all in the name of the Lord. Here Christian friends, if you be one, do all in the name of the Lord. Do all in His name, do all in the name of the Lord. In word or deed, as God decreed, do all in the name of the Lord. Please be seated. Our invitation song will be 216. 216.
We use that song, and if you want to have that song this evening, we are thankful for your attendance tonight. We're in the 13th Psalm tonight. Psalm 13. Only a few verses in this psalm, yet you'll see, I hope you can see a transition in David from verse 1 to verse 6. He begins in despair in verse 1. He says, "How long wilt thou forget me, Lord? Forever? How long wilt thou hide thy face from me?" It seems that every child of God has asked this question at one time or another. Every follower of God has at times felt neglected by God, or at the very least have waited a long time for God to do what we think needs to be done. How long is a question that is repeated in this short psalm 4 different times. Every time the question is raised, how long, it speaks of a desire for deliverance. It speaks from a great anguish of David's heart. You know, it's not very easy for any of us to prevent our desires from developing into impatience. And that question, how long, is a critical question. Often it is the case that mankind fails under the simple length of our trials. We feel that we could endure almost anything if we just knew when it would come to an end. But I just knew exactly how long I had to endure this. Yet sometimes we are tried under problems that we cannot see an end in sight. And so we as humanity, we as individuals, we cry out, how long? And I hope that you have already noticed, when you look into the Psalms, you can find yourself and other people everywhere in these Psalms. You or I have never felt myself in a corner that I did not find David in that same corner. I never can think of a time that I was so low in my life that I can't go to the Psalms and read about David being just that low or lower. On the other hand, I have been so high, rejoiced so much that I can go to the Psalms to see David at that same high, that same rejoicing. And so when David talks about the troubles here in Psalm 6, you and I can identify. When he rejoices, we can identify. We've had ups and downs in life. And so David asks the question, basically, are you going to forget me forever? How long are you going to hide your face from me? Now there is pain in David's heart, and it's from a sense that God has forgotten him, and that for some reason God is distancing himself from David. There is no doubt in my mind that whatever the situation here in Psalm 13, David had probably faced worse circumstances. But he'd been able to face whatever difficulty, because at those difficult times he had felt, he had sensed God's presence. Now, for whatever reason, he's feeling distant from God. And it does not take much time for David or for you and I to sink into deep despair if we begin to feel distant from God. The fact is, oh, God will never forget us. In the 46th chapter, the 49th chapter of Isaiah said, Zion, see, the Lord has forsaken me, and my Lord has forgotten me. That was the cry. The Lord has forsaken me, the Lord has forgotten me. He says, can a woman forget her sucking or nursing child and not have compassion the son of her womb? He said, yea, now they may forget, yet I will not forget thee. Behold, I have graven thee, I have inscribed thee on the palm of my hands. God says that mother could in some fashion forget about a sucking child. That's not likely to happen though. I guess from time to time it does. But God says, I will never forget thee. I have inscribed thee, I have written thy name on the palm of my hands. And you know, I want you to think about this. We're going to move on then. You remember when the accursed in Matthew are told, depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire. Can I ask you in your mind, what is the worst part of that verse? Think about it. Is it depart from me, or is it into everlasting fire? My friend, I suggest it has to be depart from me. Everlasting fire is terrible. It's damnation, eternal torment. But to be gone from God's presence, depart from who? From me. My friend, when we feel like we don't have God with us, when the devil deceives us, that's what it is. The devil is a great deceiver. When he deceives us into thinking that God's no longer with us, he's not concerned about us, but we keep seeing and feel God. And I hope you understand how using that word feel God in our lives. It's easy for us to become what? In despair. So when he says, depart from me, my friend, that is from the very presence of God. That has to be the worst part of that verse. No matter how hard, how horrible the everlasting fire is, you understand, hopefully, that God did not forget David. God did not hide his face from David. But David felt like it. He felt like it. When we have such strong feelings, oftentimes in our life, the feelings create their own reality. We feel something so strongly, it becomes a reality to you and I. David felt that God had forgotten him. David felt like God was hiding from him. So in a sense, that has now become David's reality. It was true according to his feelings, but my friend, it was not true according to fact. You know what? There is a balance in our lives when it comes to feelings. You know, some people want to ignore feelings. They think that feelings are unimportant, that feelings should have nothing to do with our relationship with God. My friend, I believe that is a very extreme viewpoint. God gave us all of our feelings. And our feelings that God gave us are an expression of God creating you and me in His own image. And so I can feel anger. I can feel love. I can feel care. I can feel sorrow. I can feel all kinds of feelings. God has those feelings. Feelings are a gift from God. On the other side, though, some people live their life being ruled by their feelings. They believe whatever reality their feelings present them. My friend, that causes a problem. We can't always trust our feelings. You know, it was all right for David to feel these feelings. It was good for David to take his feelings to God, but David should never accept his feelings as being the reality, the real reality. There's a difference between feelings and reality. When we feel like God has forsaken us, the reality is what? God has not. David says, how long will I take counsel in my soul? Have sorrow in my heart daily. How long shall an enemy be exalted over me? I mean, there's no wonder David is discouraged. He is taking counsel in his own soul, and it leads him to sorrow. His heart is daily, continually in sorrow, day after day. My friend, when I become discouraged, when you become discouraged, the answer is not looking into your own self. When I get discouraged, I don't need to go to some corner and look inside Scott. I need to go to my corner and look to the Lord. That's true for him many, many times. You know, you can have a problem, and the more you think about that problem, the more you contemplate that problem, the deeper and deeper and deeper you sink in depression. But what about when you take that problem to your corner and you pray about that problem? You talk to the Lord, you beseech the Lord, you beg the Lord for that problem. Don't you feel some kind of sense of release and peace? You know, thinking about our troubles is hard work. Think about that now. Thinking about our troubles is hard work. Trouble is often like a pill. You know, if you have a big old pill you got to take, it's a sour pill. The best thing you can do is put that pill, that big old bitter pill in your mouth and just water that thing around, right? Like an old cow in the crud. No. The best thing to do is what? Swallow that pill. Friend, we can't take our troubles in our mouth and just chew on them all the time. Take them to God. Take them to God. David's in a problem here. He said, how long will my enemy exalt over me? That's the third way now already that David is depressed. David did not want to lose in any area to any of his enemies when they attack him. So David is depressed in his relationship with God. He's depressed in himself in regard to his enemies, his third way. And my friend, it's not some kind of just purely selfish desire of David. David understands he's the Lord's man. He had the special call to lead God's people. In a special sense, David's enemies are the Lord's enemies. David's enemies are the people of God's enemies. And so David senses here that God has abandoned him, and it's all based upon this sense of depression David is experiencing. You know, there are many reasons for depression. You know, one's temperament may incline a person to be depressed. Illness can drain physical strength that leads to depression. Exhaustion can leave one wide open to feelings of depression, to feelings of being abandoned. You have the let down syndrome, we call it. You know, you come off some great adrenaline high, you've accomplished some great purpose, and you come down off the mountaintop, and what are you all of a sudden? Leads to depression. Pressure from spiritual enemies, pressure from natural enemies can push a person toward depression. I think that's where David is. But notice verse 3. Consider and hear me, O Lord my God. Like my eyes, lest I sleep with thee. Consider and hear me. Now, friend, David's not talking about two different things there. That's just Hebrew repetition. He says, consider and hear me, and he means the very same thing. He's crying out to God to listen, to understand, to hear me. David has felt like God has not been hearing him. But David is going to continue to cry out to God. That's what we do. We continue fervently in our prayers. We continue steadfastly in our prayers, right? We cry out over and over to God. Sometimes in great desperation. You know, desperate prayers do not have any power in themselves. Desperate prayer does not persuade some kind of reluctant God. A desperate prayer demonstrates our heart cares very passionately about the things that God cares about. You remember in John chapter 15, Jesus said there, if you abide in me, and my words abide in you, then you can ask anything you desire. And he said, and it shall be done for you. John 15, verse 7. He says, in my eyes. David has enough wisdom to know that although he feels these powerful feelings, he's not really seeing reality. David's vision has been clouded, dark. So he cries out to God, lighten my eyes. Let me see clearly. I think about the Apostle Paul in Ephesians chapter 1, 17, 18, and 19. He prayed there that people's eyes to be enlightened. We have this dark cloud over our eyes. We need to have our eyes lightened. We need to help other people to have their eyes lightened. And he says, lest I speak to people death. You know, we're not spiritually enlightened. If we're not enlightened by God, we're going to fall asleep. And spiritual sleep oftentimes leads to what? Spiritual sleep. That's why Paul, in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 14, says, awake thou that sleepest. We're talking about a natural sleeping man to get up out of the sleep. He's talking about have your eyes opened up. You're sleeping a spiritual sleep that's going to end in spiritual death, so wake up, you that's sleeping. Look at verse 4. Lest mine enemies say, I have prevailed against thee, and those that trouble me rejoice when I am moved. David knew what many of us have found out along the journey of life. One of the most terrible things about losing to anyone is hearing that person boast about his defeat. Okay? That's one of the worst things about defeat, is when the winner boasts about having defeated you. David understands that. David does not want his enemy to rejoice when he's been brought low. You don't want your enemy to rejoice when you've been brought low. I don't want mine to rejoice when I've been brought low. Lest those who trouble me rejoice when I move, he says. Those that trouble me rejoice when I move. And David knows very well that his enemies are going to gloat over his fall. And because of that, David is even more determined to not be moved. I'm not going to let my enemy have any occasion to gloat about my fall, because I'm not going to what? I'm going to win the game, because I don't want the opposing team to gloat about having defeated me. I think you'll find a hallmark in every song is the awareness of the power of God, but also awareness of the enemy. Every song is about has a great awareness of God and also an awareness of the enemy. And we need to have that same awareness in our lives. Look at the first part of verse 5, though. David says, "But I have trusted in thy mercy." David, after his prayer, he comes to a place of confidence, a place of trust. Notice he says, "I have trusted." My friend, that's in the past tense. It's as if David can remember that he really had in his life trusted God. He has cleared the fog from his eyes. His sleepy eye, he's rubbed the sleep out of his eyes. He can see clearly now. His eyes have been lightened. He said, "I can see in my life when I have trusted thee in thy mercy." At this low place of discouragement, David could not trust in God's justice. He could not trust in God's law. He could not trust in God's holiness. You know, those things might condemn him because of his feelings. My friend, no matter how low David got, you can always trust in God's mercy. My friend, no matter how low you and I get, we can always trust in God's mercy. I have trusted in thy mercy. My heart shall rejoice in thy salvation. He says, I will sing to the Lord. David is still in the middle of feelings. He's going to rejoice, he says. But he has directed his feelings. His feelings are not directing him. He says, I'm going to sing. I'm going to rejoice. It's like he tells his heart, you need to get busy rejoicing. You were discouraged. You remember in times past you trusted God. You need to get busy rejoicing now. He says, in thy salvation, that's what he's going to rejoice in. He can rejoice in nothing else. He can always rejoice in the salvation he has in God. Now, dear friend, that is solid ground for all of us as believers tonight. If we cannot rejoice in anything else, we can rejoice in our salvation until our hearts start rejoicing. He said, I will sing to the Lord. Apparently David knew what many of us have been in our own lives, that rejoicing is wonderfully expressed in our singing. He said, I am going to sing to the Lord. By his doing so, he would express his joy and he would increase his joy. You know, I am convinced beyond any shadow of any doubt that there is not near enough singing in our world. Now, I don't mean that rubbish that's popular with mankind today, that mumble jumble. I'm talking about pure singing. Singing the glorified praise and the thank, rejoice in God. The story is told about a servant, a slave girl. And she would always singing at the wash tub. And she was asked by her owners, "Why, James, how is it you're always singing? How is it that every day at this wash tub, as you're serving, you're always singing?" And she said, "It keeps the bad thoughts away." It keeps the bad thoughts away. If you've had any bad time in your life, you have probably felt the very same thing. Singing keeps the bad thoughts away. Trusting in God. Now, in this psalm, David has moved from a sense of feeling depressed, feeling abandoned by God, and now in verse 6, he's gone from those feelings to now he's doing what? He's singing songs of joy. Rejoicing in the Lord. You know, the fact that we feel abandoned itself means that we really know God is there. You know, when you feel abandoned by God, it really means that you know what it feels like to be with God. You know, to be abandoned, it requires somebody to abandon you. You can't be abandoned if nobody's there to abandon you. And so when you feel abandoned by God, it means what? It means that God has been there with you. Do like David, look back over your life and see all those difficult times when you trusted in the Lord. And the Lord brought you, the Lord made that way for you. Then he closes that verse and says, "Because he hath dealt bountifully with me." Bountifully with me, David says. David contemplates, he looks over his life, and he said, "You know, I have good reason to rejoice. I have a good reason to sing that God has been good to me. God has been good to me." Now, I don't know. It does not matter what any person's situation is. There is not a single person on the face of this earth who cannot say God has been good to me. Does not matter the physical condition, the physical circumstances. There's not a single person who cannot truthfully say the Lord has been good to me. My friend, God gave His Son to purchase our salvation. We all understand that God has dealt bountifully with me and with you. Despite whatever circumstance. Now, all of us have material blessings. We have family, we have friends, we have loved ones. We have many, many blessings poured upon us daily. But my friend, despite all of that, without all of that, God has still been good to me. He made a way for me to be saved. To never have to be without His presence. To never have to hear those words depart from me. Now, David has had a great transition. A time of great feelings of being overwhelmed, of being depressed, discouraged, abandoned, hiding, feeling like God is hiding from him. And now he is to the point where he says, "Understand that I realize now that that is not the case. I have reason to rejoice and to sing because God has been good to me. God has dealt bountifully with me." In times of our trouble, in times of your trouble, I promise you the Scriptures will strengthen you time after time after time after time. They'll strengthen you in times of trouble. I remember a quote from John Bunyan. John Bunyan said, "Were it lawful," now think about this, that's going to be yours. He says, "Were it lawful, I could and would pray for greater their trouble for the greater comfort's sake. Know what he's saying? Every time when trouble comes, God has comforted me. I could pray for greater trouble to come, where I could feel and see and have God comfort me over and over and over again. Now, none of us want to pray for troubles to come, but I think we can all identify with what John Bunyan is saying. Because all of our troubles and trials, discouragements, depressions, all of those things would overwhelm us if not for God's comfort. We've been brought low, and just as David searched ourselves, relied on the Scriptures, relied on our past experiences, and ended up singing praises to God and joy, realizing that despite everything, God's good to us. He's good to us. That is the 13th Psalm this evening. How long, Lord? What a powerful question. And all of us, I think, identify with David. I hope you've been benefited by our study of the 13th Psalm. And in your life, put that psalm into your life. And think about what David said. And how you can identify what David's words are there in that 13th Psalm. If you're outside of Christ, you must be in Christ to be saved. I mean, if you're not saved and in Christ, then one day you will hear those dreadful words, "Depart from me." You don't have to, because you get into Christ and be saved. You have to obey the gospel, repent of your sin, put faith in Jesus, be baptized in a watery grave to rise news of life. And having done so, be faithful. When you mess up, confess it. Pray God for forgiveness. Realizing day after day that God's been good to us. We have made, that He has made us a way to be saved in the end. And live eternally with Him. Can we assist you? Please come to all my stand and say.
Take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to Thee. Take my hand, let me move at the impulse of Thy love. Take my will and make it Thine. It shall be no longer mine. Take my heart, it is Thine own. It shall be Thy royal throne. Take my love, my Lord, I pour at Thy feet, its treasure store. Take myself and I will be ever only all for Thee. You didn't have the opportunity to take the Lord's Supper this morning. If you go to room number 9, you will be served. We'll sing the first verse of 200, and then we'll have a closing prayer. Stand up for Jesus, ye soldiers of the cross. Lift high its loyal banner, it must not suffer loss. From victory unto victory, His army shall be lifted. Every foe is vanquished, and Christ is Lord indeed.
Thank you, dear Lord, for the time that we've had to worship and honor Thee. We pray now as we depart that we will have an influence for good in our community, and that we can live close to Thee, honor Thee, and our everyday walk with life. church as we ever do other